It's time to get rid of a lot of these jars that are clogging up my kitchen cupboards. Welcome to my crafting channel. I'm Alana from Upcycling NZ. I'm starting with these two nice sized pickle jars, and I'm using an adult colouring book to get some inspiration for the design I'm going to put on it. I'm using a black paint pen, that's an acrylic paint, and I'm just viewing that colouring book and pinching some of the design elements. I loved the leafy roof designs on those fairy cottages. I'm freehanding this, but you could actually pull out a page from a colouring book, insert it inside the jar, and then use it to trace onto your jar. Now I'm taking some food colouring and I'm mixing that with some PVA glue. You could also use Mod Podge. I've only used a couple of drops of food colouring for this. If you try to add too much food colouring, it won't adhere to the glass, it'll be too watery. I'm also only doing one good coat. This technique is really a one and done kind of thing, because if you try to put another coat on top, it'll start to activate the coat beneath and it'll clump up. So PVA glue dries clear, so it'll leave the colour transparent on the outside of the glass. This will give me a sort of faux stained glass effect, and that's what I'm going for with this project. If you're new to my channel, I'm so grateful to have you here, and I hope I can provide you some inspiration. So that one's complete, and I've done another one in a coffee jar shape with a similar design. These do need a sealer, so I'm using a Rust-Oleum clear coat in a matte finish, but I recommend actually using a glossy coat. Here's a sample, and that's how it makes it more durable. I'm adding some red twine to the top of the jars, and this is just to add another design element. I've hot glued it and wound it around a few times, and I'll just tie a bow on the top of that. Bear in mind that these jars will not be waterproof. You can certainly rinse out the inside of the jars, but I wouldn't be soaking the outside of the jar in any water. I've made several videos now about the use and repurpose of glass jars, so check out my channel if you'd like to look at those. I try to give you new and inspiring ideas every time. For this jar, I'm going to decorate the top with an old brass strap that wasn't needed anymore. I'll just hot glue that in a size that will slip over the top. I'll be attaching a broken solar light to the top of this jar in the reveal to make a little lighthouse. So in my spare time, I've been watching some videos about how very successful social media presences or influencers create their success on their channels, and what I've learned is that they have an unwavering loyalty and love for their viewers, and they are totally engaged with them and giving them what the viewer wants. So please, if you want to see something, let me know in the comments and I'll endeavour to make that happen for you. And of course, I love my friends and viewers on my channel. I've really been enjoying talking to them and getting to know them through the comments section. I also, of course, have friends who I physically get to spend time with who support me in my channel. Love you guys. So back to the crafting. I've just used the rest of that elastic on the sample jar, and I'm going to use tea lights to display these jars at the end of the video. The next project is this seaside inspired jar, and it has a raised surface. I'm going to use white chalk paint and give that a really good undercoat. This will also be a candle jar, so I don't want all of those embellishments on the outside of the jar to be opaque, but I'll just stress some of that back. This is a folk art colour in hydrangea, and it's an acrylic paint, and I couldn't use that directly on the jar because it didn't have the kind of adhesion that chalk paint does to glass surfaces. I'm also allowing some of that white to peek through, and more of that will show when I sand back those embellishments on the outside of the jar. That was quite hard to remove, so this is going to be quite durable. I'll also take some twine and wind that around the top of this and place another bow on it just to add to the look. I'll burn back the loose fibres from the twine again, and it will require sealing, so I'm going to use wax this time. It's a clear wax, and you apply it. I use a shaving brush to apply it and then buff it off. The next project is this lolly jar, or I'd call it a lolly jar. So I'm giving this a really good undercoat in white chalk paint. I'm keeping well away from the seal. I want that to be able to seal hygienically and cleanly. You'll notice I've changed to a small sponge for the second and third coats, and this will give me a smoother surface on the finished product. In the next project I'm using this old sauerkraut jar. It's larger than all the others, and I'm going to paint that in the same way that I've painted the lolly jar. For this one I want to make a lid, so I'm taking this cork coaster that cost me 50 cents. I'm going to attach a wooden draw pull to the top of it. I'm going to give this a couple of coats of white chalk paint as well. And I'm making the sauerkraut jar and the lolly jar a set. You'll notice that I've left a little bit of cork showing in the middle there. I'm using wood glue, and I want to make sure that that permanent glue, along with some hot glue, fixes to the cork itself so it doesn't just pull off with the paint. And I'm taking an interior exterior acrylic enamel. I'm afraid I don't remember what the name of the colour is, but I'm going to paint the top of the cork lid and just the insert detail of the lolly jar lid. I decided I'd do the whole of the cork lid in the end. House paints adhere really well to the chalk paint and they're very durable. Next I want to add a little bit of age to the areas that I've painted, so I'm using some antiquing wax mixed with a little bit of water, and I'll paint that on just the detail on the top of the lolly jar. And I'll remove most of that just by dabbing it with a tissue, and that will leave a little bit of the antiquing wax in the grooves. I'm also applying it to the grooves in the lid and the outside edges. It's very subtle, but it does make a difference to the overall look. I got these stamps a couple of days ago off the Temu website. They are brand new, so I'm going to take a fine grit sanding block, and I'm just going to remove the shiny surface off the base of those stamps. This helps your ink or your paint to adhere to your stamp better, and it'll perform better for you. I'm just lining up two of these other detail stamps either side of the one that I want to use, and I've removed the other stamps off that sheet of film. And I'm going to use paint to stamp this, and I'm spreading it out on a glass sheet. This is another black house paint for exterior use, and I'm just making sure I'm getting ink all over that stamp. I always inspect it afterwards and ensure that I can see that it's covered well. Then I'm just applying that and making sure while I'm holding it down that I'm pressing every area of the stamp down. It's not going to come out perfect, but I didn't want it to look too brand new anyway. And just before I put those stamps away, I'm going to clean that paint off of them. Now I'm taking some little fabric remnants, some lace and some twine, and I'm just crisscrossing them, and I'll tie them together with another piece of twine and a little bow. And I'm just making a little adornment for the outside of the jars. I'll make two of these. Then I'll take some longer lengths of lace and twine that will reach all the way around the jar. And I'm going to tie those on and just let a little bit dangle down. And I've hot glued that in place. Then I can just add my little messy bow with quite a bit of hot glue to the top of where I've tied the knot there. And now this jar's finished, and I'll do the same thing to the lolly jar. And now that that's finished, I'll go on to the next project. This had a candle in it and I used it all. So I melted out the candle and cleaned it out. And now I'm just going to wind some twine around the jar, and I'm going to cover the logo that was showing on the front of it. Near the end, I'm just going to crisscross a little bit to give a slightly different variation on the standard wraparound that I usually use, and I'm adding this little air dry clay heart that I made. You could pop a tea light candle into this one or use it as a hold all. You could even use it as a toothbrush holder in your bathroom if you like. I think this is a gorgeous way to use any coloured jars you might have hanging around. This jar here, I was busy filming and halfway through a video and I lost all the footage. So I painted this one in a vintage green chalk paint, and I'd started to distress it with white chalk paint, and now just complete the look I was originally going for by painting the chalk paint into the grooves and then wiping it back with wet wipes. This is actually a vintage jar that's been around in my family for at least 30 years, if not more. I'll finish this off with some twine, and I'll just add a dot of hot glue to hold that in place. And then I'm going to add some PVA glue around to make sure that that twine stays exactly where I put it. I've left a loop at the bottom there so I could thread the end through it. Then I could pull the loop tight and tie off both those ends. And I'll put a little bow on that and secure it with a little bit of hot glue. I'll just burn off the frayed fibres and show you the brown jar that I made and print it with a stamp. This one had a brown acrylic paint and I did a gentle whitewash on it. I sealed both of these jars with clear wax.